John Harkless. Welcome to my kitchen where I'll be making pizza dough from scratch. It's not a lot of work. It does take a little bit of attention to time and detail, and you will have to have enough time to let the pizza dough rest in advance. And so what I normally do is use a recipe that I'll post in the link, and I make enough dough for 4 individual crusts. If I'm making pizza for multiple people, I could then use those crusts to make 4 unique pizzas or 2 normal sized nice pizzas with a whole bunch of different crowd pleasing things. At any rate, the recipe is going to require warm, not hot water, flour of course, and I'll be using yeast. Because I'm using yeast along with some oil, I'll actually need to do some of this stuff in advance and then let the dough set for a while so that the yeast can do its thing. So over on the other camera, I'll be putting the stuff in the bowl and mixing it together and talking about some of the science behind how this all works. So step 1 is to now the measuring process ends up being a little bit sloppy because unlike baking, this isn't a purely precision process, and the part where I have to turn the dough out onto the surface and knead it, it's going to require me to incorporate a little bit more flour anyway. So I'm going to be using a mix of white flour and whole wheat flour, and while I get the whole wheat flour in, I might as well start getting the water warm. And so for that, I'm just going to use some simple tap water, perfectly fine. And I'll need about a cup, and I'm going to put it in the microwave and give that a little bit of time. Not that much, 40, maybe 45 seconds. If you have a thermometer, you can actually measure the temperature. And what you want is something that's going to end up being around 110 degrees. And that's because when you put the yeast in, you don't want to kill the yeast, but you want it warm enough that the yeast feels good about doing its thing. So, I've already got 2 cups in. I'm going to add in just a little bit of salt. Any kind of salt is fine, just a little bit. Now I'm going to add in the 3rd cup, which is whole wheat flour. So, using my half measure again. One. And 2. So now I have 3 cups of flour. Now because I get a little bit fancy with it, I'm going to add in some garlic. I enjoy garlic. So that's going to give the bread a nice bit of flavor when that's all said and done. I'm going to need something to mix this all up with. I'm just going to use a regular spatula to mix all those things together. So I've got flour, I've got a little bit of salt, I've got a decent amount of garlic, and in order to make sure that this actually rises, I'm going to add in the yeast. Different recipes will give you different amounts. I'm just going to add in about 1.5 teaspoons. So 1 and a little bit more. Microwave is beeping at me because I should have warm water. So the final ingredient to add in to make it work more like pizza dough as opposed to just sort of really dry, almost pie-like dough without all the butter fat is you add in some olive oil. So I'm going to take the same spoon that I use for the yeast, and since it's a teaspoon, I'll need 3 to give me a tablespoon of oil. Using olive oil, so if you're being health conscious, it's at least the good stuff. So that's been tossed in, put that in the sink for safekeeping. And now comes the fun part. I can add in my warmed water. And now I'll just mix this together until it just comes together as a dough. And so in this case, the warmth will get the yeast going. Because it's an imprecise measure, in order to get everything to hang together a little bit more, I'm going to add a little more water, bit by bit. And now that that's all been incorporated, the only thing left to do is to roll this out onto a surface that's been prepped with flour. So I'm going to put a couple things back, put the garlic in the spice rack, keep the yeast cold. And now all I got to do is throw down some flour, pop the dough onto it, roll it, knead it a few good times to really get everything sticking together and acting kind of gluey. At which point I'll then be able to just cover it and come back to it in an hour. So I've got my dough. Unlike pie dough, the more you work it, the more it becomes kind of gluey. You don't want to go nuts because then it'll be completely tough. But you want to be able to make sure that when the time comes that you can guarantee you have a ball of dough that is going to stick to itself more than it sticks to you or to your surfaces. So don't be scared to use flour. And now I can bring the bowl back because I've got one last thing to do with the oil. I need to put enough oil to be able to roll this around and coat the bottom and sides. So let's actually put this excess dough right on that thing. Okay. Set that to the side. So we just want to roll the bowl around, making sure that we get oil on a lot of the surface. Add in olive oil and bottom's coated. We want to get it up the sides a good bit because this thing is going to pretty much double in size over the next hour. So I'm not fancy enough to have a time lapse set up, so you'll just have to trust me that I'm going to come back in an hour and we're going to have pizza dough. So I've got the ball of dough that I let sit on the scraper, drop that right in there, and so that's going to sit. I'm going to put a wet paper towel over the top. You'll see it on the overhead shot, and that's going to sit for about an hour. Let it rise, and then I'll be able to cut it into 4 pieces to have 4 individual balls of dough to be rolled out at a future date to bake pie. Pie crust for pizza pie, not sweet pies or quiches. So I'll need this. I'll need some water on the paper towel. And now can open this up and just cover it. Voila. So now we wait an hour. I'll roll this out and cut it up, stuff it into some plastic bags. That way I can freeze it and use it later to make pizza pies. Easy. Here we go. It's been an hour. The dough should be ready to be sectioned into 4 parts and put away to be thawed and used later. So, big reveal. You can see that it's risen a good bit, decent amount of rise there. And that coating of oil is going to help me be able to just take it all off relatively easily. Four balls of dough. And all I'm going to do is just make sure I've mashed out a good amount of the air. So I've now got 4 pizzas worth of dough sealed up in a bag, and that bag goes in the freezer. And now I can just thaw it, roll it out, stretch it, shape it into a nice pie, and boom, pizza dough.